stuff. Right, welcome everybody. Just to admit a few more people coming into the room. Good stuff. Right, we're recording now. So, okay, so great to see everybody again this month. As I've said many times, really enjoy these sessions. Probably one of the highlights of my month. So we've got a bit of a slightly different agenda today. I'm going to do a very quick update on the Fab Stuff page that I mentioned last month. That will take up about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over to, we just leave it as a very open Q&A session with Brian and Amit, and two hugely respected and hugely knowledgeable individuals whose work around reconditioning has been immense over the years. So grateful to have both of them in the room with us today. So while I'm just waffling on about Fab Stuff, you can think of some questions, and then we'll just do usual hands up. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat if you want to put some stuff in the chat, if you too off camera, or if you want to come on camera and ask some questions. So think of anything you want to ask these two guys. I'm sure they're open to any questions, whether it's reconditioning or deconditioning or not. It could be about the best way to get to Australia. That will go to Brian. Obviously he's backwards and forwards, but we'll have a fun session anyway. Right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me just get my details ready. So share that. It's not usually my job to do this, so I'm usually handed over to somebody else at this point to say, well, tell us all about your amazing work. So I'm going to try and pick the right screen to share, and then pop that onto slideshow. Okay, so really quick one. As I mentioned on the last meeting, we've now got we've partnered up with the Academy of Fabulous Stuff. Many of you on the call will be already aware of what they do. A repository of really good stuff that's hosted by two great people, Roy Lilly and Terry Porritt, who set this up on Valentine's Day many years ago, just to recognise that there isn't a place really across the country that hosts the collective fabulous stuff that people do, however great or small that may be. So they set up the Fab Stuff repository, and people have just uploaded their stuff, and it's accessible. You can search for content, whatever it is, whether it's our kind of work or anything else. Just go onto the site and you can find all sorts of. So rather than try and create another space, so we'll have a chat with Terry and Roy and said, no, can we create a space on the website for some ReconditionTheNation work? And he said, yeah, of course you can. So I'm going to quickly run through how we get that. So I'll share these slides afterwards with you so you can see them. And then there's a link to Fab Stuff there. So basically, when you've logged into Fab Stuff, you'll see this page here. If you've not already got an account with the Fab Stuff, so it's a really easy way to get set up. So first of all, what you need to do is to register. Okay, so go to the register button that's up there. Fill in your details, really simple. Click on terms and conditions, not asking for too much there, just name, email address and the password. Then you just click on the register button at the bottom. Really dead simple, not a long process to get signed up. Then you've got an account. Basically, you can go in there and share some stuff. So you go back to the home page, you'll click on the home button here to get to the home page, and then you want to basically share your Fab Stuff. So it could be as big work or small work that you've been involved in. Doesn't really matter. It's just about how you share your work out there, and that's the important stuff about how you can do that. So this is the place where you can do that. First of all, you go to Fab Collections, and then you can see us there. We've got our own collections page there, the ReconditionTheNation Fab Stuff campaign, and you click on that, and that takes us to our own specific page. And you can see on this page, it's all about what we're doing here. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see all the shares, all the information that people have uploaded previously about the ReconditionTheNation Fab Stuff campaign. So this sort of place, if you want to go and find some stuff and hunt around, this will be the page that you go to, the ReconditionTheNation Fab Stuff campaign page. If you want to upload stuff, your own stuff, you go back to the home page, and then you click on this share your Fab Stuff, the simple button here, and you can start to collate your information. It takes you to this page here, and it gives you the chance to sort of fill in a few details. Always make sure that you change this bit here, this bit in blue, from fabulous stuff to Recondition the Nation Fab Stuff campaign. Then it will get allocated to that particular page. So you can see all the details, just your own details there, your own email address, a title for the work. You've got lots of characters, lots of space to write your stuff. You can write as little as you like, or as much as you like, and then you can choose a number of images if you want. You've got some photographs of sort of the work that you're doing. You can upload those photographs as well, or there may be documents that you've got. Particularly, I know we've got a lot of document sharing on the WhatsApp group. You can host documents here as well, so you can upload those documents. If you've got slide decks or forms or audits that you complete, and you can upload those here as well. Then literally click on the submit button, and then that takes you back to the homepage again. So that's all it is. That's really simple. I'd really encourage you to get involved in that. That's obviously you'll have the recording of this as well, so you can watch that back if you want, if I've run through too quickly. You'll also have those slides as well you can work through. But I'd encourage you all to, however great or small your work is, a lot of you have come to this session already and shared your good stuff. That now is going to be our home for sharing all our sort of simple case studies and all the good stuff that you do. So it's there, and you can access it however much or however little you want to. But I would encourage you to do that, because that's where outside of these meetings, you'll be able to find some inspiration if you're looking for it as well. And that's what we're looking for. That's the purpose of this as well, is to learn from each other. So it hasn't necessarily always got to be through this particular meeting. So get yourself set up, get yourself registered, and start sharing your good stuff. What happens to that often is that, well, a lot of the times, most of those contents will then get shared through social media on the Fab Stuff X account and on their Facebook page. So you'll get to share it out to other people as well when we just do this group. And as I see them cropping up as well, I'll share them through the Recondition the Nation Twitter account as well. So we'll get a chance to share it out there. Right, so that's me done. Whistle stop tour through Fab Stuff, and yeah, that was just about 5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to open the floor. This could take 2 minutes, or it could take the whole hour. We'll see how it goes. Right, so Josh is going to go first. Josh, over to you.
I mean, I wasn't poised over the raising hand function at all for any means. So I just want to, it's a question obviously to Amit and to Brian really. The broad question is really, from a national perspective, do you have any updates on any work that's going on in terms of the wider picture here around how, this could be instilled in wider governance and policy around how prevention of HAD could be, business as usual should be written into how NHS trusts, for example, should be operating. I would like to also praise Nick and colleagues as well for bringing this group together in the essence that, the amount of ideas that have been shared have been fantastic, and not because Jackie's on this meeting, but I do really want to shout out to Jackie and all the exceptional work that she's doing and leading on. The podcast idea, I think, is fantastic, and ways and means that we're utilising different avenues to raise awareness. So it's just impressive. The John Hopkins work as well, Jackie as well. I'd love to touch base with you with that, because I would have loved to have gone to, because they're doing some great stuff over in the States as well. But yeah, the platform here is great because there's so much we can uplift and shift. But what I'm also interested in is what the sort of the national strategy is and how we can pull this together to really make this long-term sustainable change, whether this is in education curriculum in terms of medicine or nursing or AHPs, or actually could we, go really big and change, wider government policy like the hospital and community discharging operating model as an example. But yeah, sorry, long-winded question, bit of praise there, but thankful for the group.
Okay, well, let me start with this then. Thank you, Josh. I think first of all, I'll say that I'm hugely grateful to everybody who has been actually doing lots of stuff in this arena. And I think when we started the East of England reconditioning games, we never knew that this will translate into Recondition the Nation. It was Recondition the Nation was an afterthought after the success of the East of England games. But I think to some extent in the mind there was that, yes, if this goes well, then yes, we will go and do a national one. So that materialized. It took time, but I think people kind of used their own energy and their own ideas. On the back of it, and actually to some extent before that, we had already been working with the Public Health England, then Public Health England, and also the Council of Deans for Medical School, Nursing School, Pharmacy Schools, and Council, the Society for Stroke Medicine, Sports Medicine, not Stroke Medicine, with all these people. So, and some of you might have heard from the, I think it was published in the Independent and the Guardian, Amanda Pritchard talking about the two purposes of Recondition the Nation that we had identified. One was to prevent avoidable harm in hospitals, and second was to bring joy to staff's work, to avoid moral injury. And Brian here is my inspirational guru, has been so for many years now, and the terminology that he phrased at the time still is alive and kicking. So, but Amanda used some of these words in her press release very recently at the NHS Confed. Was it last week or something like that, 10 days ago? So I think there is work ongoing. The Community Rehabilitation Alliance, of which I'm a co-chair of, has also released something around the essence of rehabilitation, that rehabilitation is as important as surgery or whatever else that is, and the campaign Right to Rehab. We also attended, along with Kate Tantum, event in the House of Lords about a month or so ago, talking about the rehabilitation and the importance of it. So I think there is work going on a lot of fronts in this regard, and I think the impact is obvious. Whether it actually then finally and eventually translates into a government policy and the NHS must do things for the hospitals, I don't know. But I think as long as we can make people aware, that is important. Although I did not meet West Region a few months ago, but some of my colleagues did go and see him, and he understood the importance of rehabilitation. And in his words, he talked about rehabilitation, and so has the NHS medical director more recently. So I think there is awareness around it, and that is always a good starting point. We hope that whenever the new government starts, we will probably try and meet the right kind of people, and we are meeting those right kind of people who can actually make those influential decisions. So that's where we are at the moment.
Right, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One of the things, listening to Amit as describing it, strikes me that in some respects, many of this work, if you will, it started as a tiny little trickle, which then through the collective work has become a bit of a brook and then a stream, and now it feels like it's a river. And if you want to take a mountain down, just start with water. Because I think collectively, it's like it's a single drop doesn't make an ocean, but an ocean is full of single drops. And I think collectively what's happening is there's more and more and more combined efforts working in all kinds of different places, in all kinds of different ways. And it does, I feel, there's a timing thing. There is an important piece around timing. I wish you could find a TED Talk, because years ago I found a TED Talk of a guy who had created 100 different businesses. He was a serial entrepreneur, Yank. And he wanted to find out, why was it that some companies succeeded and others didn't? And so he looked at, things like Google and Apple, and he looked at YouTube and stuff like that. And one of his own businesses, he had set up what would have been a precursor to YouTube. But why did YouTube succeed? It's because YouTube arrived at the time that broadband was becoming more prevalent in the United States. So you can have the right idea, but the wrong time. And it feels like now is the right time. And you know that many of us who've done anything successful in our lives, and that means all 53 of us in this room, none of us got it to where we are by just licking stones. You know, we did it because we've all worked really, really, really hard over many, many years collectively. And it's our collective purpose and collective impact that's starting to have an impact further beyond this river of change that we're riding. And if you look at the likes of individuals like Jenny Keane, who is now the National Director for Rehabilitation for NHSE, formerly Chief AHP for Northern Ireland, she 100% gets it. You start to see likes of Howard Catton, the Chief Executive of the International Council of Nurses. He spoke at a Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, have been really brilliant supporters, what they're calling Get Up, Get Dressed, Get Moving. Amit knows this. What do you call it? Get up, get dressed, get moving, end PJ paralysis, recondition the nation, end bent centricity, which is what they call it in Holland. Everybody moves. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is we all want the same thing. So by pressing the conversation, we're actually getting these conversations with various folk. I was at a NHS Confed thing 6-8 months ago, and I happened upon the minister as she was going out the door. So you just grab the opportunities. I mean, the poor woman was in a moon boot at the time. So we got having a conversation about rehabilitation. And these things are, you chuck a stone in a still pond and it ripples all the way to the shore. So you don't know where it's going to end. Jed Kearney, who is the Associate Minister for Health in Australia, I joined her on LinkedIn the other day, and I've got a message for her. She's a nurse by background. She's leads for older people. So she and I are going to be having a conversation on LinkedIn about how can we help? What can we do? Did you know this is a thing? And to my mind, the game changer in this whole thing is the new paper by Dr. James Y et al., which came out about end PJ paralysis interventions. Those who, I'll put my email address in the chat, but those who haven't seen this paper, please, I will happily send it to any of you. But TLDR, too long didn't read. Sample size of 32,844 patients in Alberta, Canada. They looked interrupted time series on end PJ paralysis interventions. Short story long or long story short, take your pick. 1.8 day reduction in length of stay, 2.2 fewer fall events. That means actually patients are safer if they're mobilizing than if they're not. And a personal one for me is more patients ending up going back to their home than to a care home. Now, that is the kind of scholarly evidence that I think we've been looking for and needing for quite some time that shows this is what can happen. The challenge we face, and Jackie and I had a fantastic, good old nerd out conversation for an hour a couple of weeks ago, where we were talking about, among other things, measures. One of the big challenges we face is deconditioning is nowhere as easy to capture as a 4-hour target for the emergency departments, 2 weeks urgent cancer waits, falls, pressure sores. It's a lot messier, and politicians don't like messy. What they like even less is people on corridors, people waiting in the back of ambulances, people in the wrong wards. And have we got a solution for them? So the discourse has to shift to two things. One, we need to harden the messages, which become less about can we get people up and mobilizing, that needs to shape into how do we justify this not happening? And the second thing is we have a solution that'll address significantly the operational pressures across health systems. Can we have a conversation? So I think it's those things. And the last thing I would say in this long soliloquy, apologies, is this: don't give up hope, because 30 years ago, surgeons would say, I wonder if I can get this person in as a day case. Now they do, how do I justify this person being admitted? Because as we know, the vast majority of elective procedures are now done as day cases. So the level of paradigm shift that took in the mid 2000s, we were doing what we call basket of cases, the most the top 10 conditions that could be done as a day case rather than being constantly. It took a big cultural shift, but look at where our surgeon colleagues are now. And I think that's where we will be. And I don't think we'll have to wait 30 years or anything like it. That's where I think we can get to, where we will be. Default setting is, how do I justify not mobilizing this person and all of the good things that comes from that? And that's, I think, somewhere where the big picture is. So the change isn't top down or bottom up, but change is side by side. It's one heart, one mind, one conversation at a time at every opportunity.
It's definitely, I feel something particularly this year more than I have over the last few years as this has been growing. The Amanda Pritchard speech at Confed, I was asked to provide some content for that by the comms team that fed into that. There's definitely an interest in policy world now. You do get a sense of that. It's the right way around though. I wouldn't have wanted policy to come first in this space, because you want to sort of grow it and sense it and feel it, because the policy almost certainly will be, well, frankly, wrong, because what you're doing at the moment as a collective group is you're developing the collective evidence, you're developing the collective knowledge. I always feel like we should write policy right at the very end, almost. It's that SOP thing that we do. We try and write a SOP first and then try and implement the SOP. Well, actually, do some stuff and then write the SOP based on the stuff that you've learned. And I think that's what we're doing here, and that's why I get a sense of. And you probably got to say, I'm not a policy person. I'm completely other end of the scale to that kind of thing. I'm a let's just see what we can figure out, and that's why I enjoy this. And it may feel frustrating at times, and I've sensed it in this group over the years, that we feel like we're pushing water uphill at times in terms of the messaging, because there's a lot of people on this call that will feel like they're on their own. They're just, or have felt like they're on their own previously, just lone voices. And it's, where else can I find that support? And I've been in that situation myself, and you're screaming out, and you want to make a difference. So that builds that sense of, well, what can we do? And what you're doing now is what we can do, and that's all I would say. Keep on, it is keep on growing, keep on building, and as Brian mentioned there will come a point when it will be the right time, and all of a sudden it will just take off, and all the work that you've done previously will have been worth it, and you'll have established the foundations to allow this to take off. Without those foundations, we won't have the evidence, we won't have the examples, we won't have the case studies, we won't have the collective knowledge that we've got here. So it feels like it's a slow burner, but it also feels like it's, over the last 12 months particularly, it's building momentum outside of this group as well. Josh.
Yeah, sorry, I will hopefully allow the floor for somebody else. But it's just, I want to thank you for your comments, and you're right. And that whole policy element, I'm completely with you. And from a clinical background, originally, and why I'm trying to support this work where I am, it wasn't even a point. It should just be bread and butter really to what we do. It's, the evidence base for just promoting activity alone is probably one of the most researched evidence-based practices for improving health outcomes, and especially around health and mental health as well. I think the reason I'm saying this as well is to any of my colleagues here who are maybe from a clinical background, and now I work in transformation, some more the corporate side, is trying to balance out the two. But you're absolutely spot on. I feel like what this is doing, what Amit and Brian have done over the years, and it's creating this following and creating this strong foundation that, like you say, and what you said, Brian, so right, that when the timing is right to really implement that national, right, this is the directive, this is what we need to do. Everyone's here ready to go. We're all pumped, primed, ready to initiate whatever needs to be done. So you're absolutely spot on. But I think it's just also, in the meantime, when we're really all working on various programs of work, we're trying to put cases through, we're trying to find the justification for it, the evidence to support it, to get that sustainability. This is why now I think I'm hungry just to, this should be what should be happening every day, if that makes sense. But yeah, and also, Brian, yes, that paper is fantastic and did support a business case for me. So thank you very much. So yeah, definitely good for my other colleagues who are working in these sort of fields to, if they need a bit of support in that. So, but thank you very, very much.
That's it. Apparently I'm not a member of the chat, so I can't put in my email address because, I've been barred. So, but it's Brian.
I'll sort that out, Brian. Don't worry. I'll pop the link to the online bit, but obviously you can't download that without an account. So, Zoe, jump in.
Thank you. Firstly, can I say what a pleasure it is to be on this call today with everybody. And obviously I'm in a slightly different role now, but a year and a half ago, when I think back to my previous role as being a senior nurse, and I suppose given what we've just heard, which is really exciting, and it absolutely does feel different to what it does what it did a year ago. What would be this is kind of to Brian and to Amit, what would be your one piece of advice to staff? Now, it doesn't matter what background they have, because we still have some organisations, and now I go into them on a regular basis, because there's so much pressure and challenge about reducing harm and reducing falls. Especially most NHS organisations now have a falls team and a specialist team that support mobilising and safe movement of patients, but they are battling against the drive to reduce harm to patients. And we absolutely don't want moderate and severe harm to come to patients, but actually the reluctance to move patients and the culture of not mobilising or leaving patients in bed longer, which we all know on this call, the damage that causes. So it's a real kind of disconnect between reducing harm and not wanting to move patients for fear of them falling, and then upping your falls rate, because actually that's then reported via quality and safety boards and the governance, etc. So I can see where that real dilemma is. And if you are whether you are a member of the AHP team, nursing team, or a junior doctor that's working on the wards, and you know the data, you know the evidence, how do you kind of battle that? Because not all of our organisations have that amazing exec culture that, you know, some of our chief nurses are really embracing across the UK. So I suppose it's that one piece of advice that you would give to them to motivate them to help make that change.
Amit, are you happy if I pick up this one first?
Yeah, please do.
I think the first thing is, the first step in changing a certain behavior is understanding why it occurs in the first place. And remember that while the facts are useful, feelings is who we are. And when there's a climate of concern that if a fall occurs, people will get into trouble, then people are resile against what will be the perceived risk to them. Because you have to start with the individual, you know, as while we articulate, you know, as good patients, it's the WIFM stuff. What's in it for me to change? And first people change and then organizations change. And you have to hold a space for people to enable them to articulate the fears they have about the change. And the superficial response is staffing and resources, but actually you have to hold a space for them to talk about, what if I get into trouble? Because I think we underestimate how much fear plays in change making. What if I get into trouble? What about my team? What about the patient? What about, you know, we tried this and it doesn't work? What about we did it before and it didn't work out? We tried and it just failed. You know, what about and you know, what about all the data access? And what about all the staffing I don't have? And you have to enable people to feel safe to talk about it. And the thing is, you don't have to have the answers. All you have to do is steer people towards the answer that they come up with, and then support and validate and just and you know, change takes time because it's the feelings that matter, reinforced by, I mean, let's be honest, if you look at the political climate, you know, leaving aside, I'm not going to get to be too easy, wouldn't it, of Independence Day, but it would be easy to blame one side or another. But actually, most of us make our judgment calls about what we like based on our feelings more than the fact. Brexit is a really good example of that. Trump is a great example, even better example. You know, it's not about the evidence, it's about the feelings about that. That's where I think that's the single thing. Focus on feelings and facts can follow. Which isn't a bad slogan.
That's good advice.
Good, yeah. Amit, anything from you?
I think I'll go back to one of my own colleagues in my own hospital, where I've heard people say, well, Mr. Whatever, don't stand. because if you fall, it's a lot of paperwork.
Yes.
So, and we had a discussion around this, and then, as Brian said, explore the fears, explore the feelings, and it emerged that this person has been in trouble because of the same kind of reason, and your own experiences sometimes actually lead to the actions that follow. And on another occasion, I think this was about 2015-16 when we started doing this work, and it was like, I think find the first 5% of finding the first follower is always the tricky one. Once you got the first follower, then you have 5% followers, and those 5% will do the 20%, and those 20% will do the rest. Motivation, I think, is really, really important, and maybe I'll get in trouble for sharing this, but and maybe not. But in one of the important national award categories this year had at least 60% of their nominations around reconditioning, and what they've done in their own fields. And of course, we got Jackie Holmes, who won the award. Who won the award last year, didn't you, Jackie? Around care of older people. So I think what motivates people and what scares people, addressing those fears, is really, really important. That's all I'll say, really.
Thank you, Amit. There's a few other comments in the chat as well from Jane and Rachel, so have a look at those. But I've got a couple of people lined up now with questions, so I'm going to go to Jackie first, and then I think Claire as well.
Thanks, and thanks for everyone for giving me a bit of praise in this meeting. It's definitely not why I joined, but it's really lovely to hear it, so thank you. So my question is kind of off the back of what Josh asked and the conversation in terms of that kind of policy and sort of driving it from that point of view. But I've had a lot of conversations recently around staff who have been working in the NHS for quite a few years, saying that, 20, 30 years ago, this was the way of working. This was what people did. They got people up, dressed, moving. That's just kind of what they did. And so what do you think has happened that we've lost that? And, is it because we're now getting far more complex patients into hospital who are far more acutely unwell, and we can't kind of manage, back then were they less unwell, so we could promote, activity and mobility in hospital, and how do we kind of tackle that now and kind of go back to that time to enforce those kind of policies in the future, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. I think I've been so long in nursing. I'm like proud I'm a nurse, but I've been so long in it that I was dating one of Florence's probationers, back in the day. And there was a thing that, you had to get patients to get out of bed because the sister would kill you twice. She would, she'd come around a second time to make sure you were dead. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And some of that is based on ward managers have been pulled out of the clinical oversight in clinical practice into the other activities. Now, but become probably a bit tasteless to say, and I have a new book that's coming out in August on this, because also we're now seeing AHPs becoming ward managers. So that's one part of it. That's ostensibly the one of the reasons. And we need clinical leaders clinically leading at every level. The second thing is, I don't think patients have got sicker. What has happened is length of stay has roughly halved, which means the intensity of the workload has got much, much greater because people are in for less time and are sicker as a consequence as a population So things haven't changed. But the other thing is, it's a sign of success of the NHS is that, you know, and healthcare, is that people are surviving stuff they didn't previously survive and need greater therapeutic inputs in a way that they weren't available to them. I thought it was pretty shameful. I won't say which party or anything like that, but it was the daughter of a famous person who's now standing to be an MP. And she was saying, I did an interview in the Telegraph at the Times, you know, the NHS, when it started, it only needed about £5 million. And, you know, the population may have only doubled, but now it's got 100 billion. We don't need this money. Well, back in 1948, if you had a heart attack, you died. If you had a heart attack, there was no CPR for you. There was no bypass surgery. Maybe something, and I get really frustrated when I hear such facile a commentary about a system that is infinitely more complex. We've seen the atomization of society, where people didn't have people to look after them in their home because they moved to different parts of the world. So it is a complex, more messy, and more all kinds of stuff. And I think what we're doing is Sisyphean work to push the boulder constantly up the hill. The one thing that hasn't changed, though, in all of this time is people come into healthcare for exactly the same reason they did when Florence went out to Scutari, which is people want to care for people and make it better for people at whatever age, at whatever discipline.
Somebody who works for the
people
Falls
wanted the
team
same
has just
thing.
thought, I'm sick of being called the Falls team.
We've been heckled from the side there. So those are my thoughts, and it is fixable because it's the most important thing. Remember, there is no one NHS culture, and there's no one Doncaster or Kingston or Royal Devon culture or the Essex culture. What there is one health system and 1,000 different villages within it, and even within the hospitals, you have micro cultures within them. And all of us are clinicians. When we were all student nurses or therapists or doctors, you'd have gone from one ward to another ward, 20 meters apart, and it was a whole new country. And the biggest single determinant of the culture of that unit was what the ward manager was like. So that's where I think putting the energy into that, and we all know this intuitively, don't we? So that's what makes it fixable as well, without detached from above. It's invest in the band sevens, if you will, further down.
Yeah, spot on. Amit, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think totally as Dan says, I think the focus of the hospitals have shifted into the acute treatments. And all we are worried about now is length of stay, for example, and similar things. Which is fine, but there are other things. We surveyed our staff a few years ago. I think from memory, the key three things that came out from the staff point of view was, one, there was a lack of staffing, and I actually do agree with that, because to take an older person to the toilet takes time. To give them the commode in the bed takes very little time. But that is surely not the right thing to do. Secondly, I think staff are, as we discussed, the staff are afraid of being blamed and debates and the paper that it generates and the investigation and the phenomena that comes with it. And Marida, is our chief nurse now. Before this, she was in Nottingham, and when she was in Nottingham, she inserted a question in all her dates, saying, could deconditioning have contributed to this data? A simple question, but it actually makes you think. This person had a fall. Could the fall have been contributed to by deconditioning? Or this person developed CDF or MRSA or whatever? Could deconditioning have contributed to this? Yes or no? There's no scientific way to prove it. But it actually starts thinking, people start thinking about it. And then the third thing, which a lot of our therapy colleagues especially will probably identify with, is the lack of the loss of the therapy spaces or the activity spaces that people used to have. Previously, we had day rooms, we had exercise rooms and things like that. But because of the need for more beds in hospitals or the office spaces in hospitals. I think a lot of those spaces have disappeared. But I think there are ways and means to actually do something like that. So, for example, in one of the roads that I have, we don't have a huge amount of space. But for half an hour a day, for example, there is surely space for putting a table in the middle of the day, getting all 4, 5, or 6 of those patients in, and having a game of cards, for example, or whatever that means, whatever that might mean for people. On that design aspect, I think I went to see the Veterans Hospital in Minnesota a few years ago, and what they had was really amazing. So they had a basketball court and whatever tennis court on the on during normal hours, and later on for the lunchtime hours they have these things which will go up and down. So once you press a button, the dining table will come from the ceiling onto the floor, and people will have their food there. So, good utilization of that space. So it's not beyond human minds and imagination. It's just sometimes it's just some things to think about and prioritize those things. But there are ways and means of creating those spaces.
Being creative, I guess, right, moment, isn't it? It's not thinking that we always have to have a space for that. There's, think about how we build this into just normal activity, in terms of mobilization or therapy activity, they can be incorporated into. Go on.
And I do remember one of my patients. I saw, and this is without any push on the patient. He basically was exercising, doing kind of push-ups with the bed being used as the machine to do the push-ups. So he pushed his bed against the wall and started doing push-ups there. And incidentally, I was there. And I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What is this?" He said, "I'm doing my exercise." And we videoed him at the time. This is going back a few years ago. I'm sure that video is somewhere. But talking about him now, or to people who are not aware, it would seem that it was a planted video, but it wasn't. This was a genuine patient who was doing it on his own initiative, because he said, if I stayed here, I will not be able to walk better. I mean, he had those insights. Nobody told him about it.
Yeah.
But he taught us that, people, if they are aware, they can do things themselves. And
I guess you gave him, sort of like yourself would not say, "Get back in bed." What are you doing? You're not doing that. We've got a bit of a queue building.
Yes, so we've got 16 minutes, so I put a 2-minute timer for myself anyway, so we won't speak for any longer than 2 minutes on next to get everybody in, with Claire next, I think.
Yeah, Claire.
Thank you. So I can see some messages in the chat about possibly thinking about reframing their falls prevention services. That's exactly what we are about to do. So I've come back to work today from a day off, and the post that I have put out has been approved and is advertised as a more of a reconditioning lead. So I guess, have you got any advice for the successful candidate in starting a new role and trying to change from a falls prevention team to more of the reconditioning work?
Less than 2 minutes to go to answer. Right, first of all, language is so important. I remember speaking to 300 falls prevention people going into Lions Den. It was in the middle of COVID. Said, why is it called falls prevention? Shouldn't it be safer mobility? Falls prevention being deficit thinking, safer mobility being an asset base. So when she or he takes the role, is the language they use should be asset oriented. So instead of like, and many of you will have heard me talk about this before, but instead of talking about days in hospital, have conversations about days away from home. Instead about length of stay, it's about giving patients back time. And instead of even about being safer, it's even about making it more enjoyable. Having activities which gamify it. So, places like that, there's various villages wherever you work. Put those villages 10 meters apart, personalize it. So I'm going to use the Irish example. So Dublin, Wicklow, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, Kerry. If somebody's from County Kerry, their goal is to do, say, 25, 30 meters to get home. And by gamifying it, and one thing we all know with games is they constantly reward really quickly. Who would do PS4 or any type of games if you had to wait 4 years to get the prize? They constantly make the prizes really, really quick. What's the word I'm looking for? They make them really easy to access. They make them harder later, which is what strengthening is, and make it fun. So how can you make it fun? I've got 10 seconds. I think that's enough time.
Brian, any advice for the candidates? Sorry, Amit, sorry.
Well, I think start somewhere, listen to your staff, and help them develop and deliver whatever they want to deliver, as long as they think it's appropriate and proportionate and doable. But empower the staff, give them the help and the guidance that they need. And if there is anything we can do to help, apart from the resources which are handily available to everyone, then do feel free to signpost them to us.
Lovely, thank you.
Brilliant. Good question. Thanks, Claire. Jane?
I was just picking up on what Amit said earlier, and also a little bit of what Zoe said at the beginning about kind of being very preoccupied about falls and falls with harm and things, and also kind of what Brian said about timing, because I think with kind of the peace surf sort of work that's come in, and how now the overall aim is when we look at falls, we're looking at learning around falls, and certainly a lot of the time on our falls learning panel we're talking a lot about deconditioning within them, and whether you both think that potentially moving away from focusing on harms from fall but learning from falls, we might slowly become a less kind of risk averse organization.
In a short, yeah, 100%. And I think it's telling. I was in Sunderland last week giving a keynote on human factors in patient safety. And their PSERF is being led by one of the ED consultants. And tellingly, they're completely booked right up to Christmas for all the programs they're doing. The chief exec started today, and he talked about this is the number of falls we've had, or harm events we have had, something like 20, just shy of 19,986, of which 220, so it's barely 1%, led to harm. But what I was impressed about was the chief exec talks about patient safety being the priority. This is what we're doing. This is the harms that are being caused. Here's the evidence around it. And let's change the conversation about how do we make it better. So leaders set the tone, managers carry the culture, and peers drive belonging.
Amit?
I totally agree. I think what Brian says is absolutely amazing. Leaders, as leaders, and we are all leaders, I think we have a duty to set that change the language where we can. Of course, we are also, many of us will be managers, so we do need to carry those decisions. But we are also clinicians, and we are also doers, and don't forget why we are doing this job. Most of us, we could have been doing something different if we wanted to. We are here by choice. And the reason we do what we do is because this is what we want to do. This is how we want to help people. And yes, falls will happen. And I tell you a real story that has happened. We had somebody who was frequently falling, and staff were actually quite afraid of mobilizing that person on the road. And eventually, the person did go home. And but at home, he had a fall again, came in with some subdural hematoma, etc., and eventually died in hospital. It did go to the coroner, and the coroner understood what was the issue. And his final concluding remarks were on the, I can't remember the exact words, of course, but they were on the lines of that this person had a fall at home as part of their rehabilitation. Rehabilitation was essential for his recovery, and it was because it was an accidental death. It could have happened to anybody. So the coroner or the GNC or the RCM and the nursing council, etc., etc., I think through the work that has happened over the years, they understand the importance of that rehabilitation, and so do the coroners. But I don't think we have to worry that much about things, as long as we got a decent record keeping, a genuine desire, and reasonable documentation of the actions we have taken or recommendations that we have made.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thanks, Amit and Brian. Yeah, language is so important. I'm going to go to Bethany. Is it Beth? Bethany?
It's Beth.
Okay,
Yeah.
Beth, over to you.
Hello. I'm a physio. I work at Nottingham Uni Hospitals, and I'm throwing out a bit of a challenge and then a bit of a question. So there's a lot of talk about walking, but actually the evidence shows that walking doesn't help prevent falls. It's strength and balance and education. So my question is, given that we don't have as many rehab spaces and rehab beds these days, and I work in an acute trust, so I have literally just a bed space per patient, how do you suggest that my team can incorporate strength and balance, but particularly strength, with basically no equipment and minimal time to do it really, really well?
Amit, do you want to go first on this one? It's your neighbouring organisation.
Absolutely, and not just the neighbouring organisation. I've got close friends who work at Nottingham, some of whom you will know, Bethany, that at least one of them has chaired the World Falls Guidelines.
Prof Masood, yeah.
Prof Masood, and then Upinder Sahota. He is quite a well-known figure in this field. And you also had Adam Gordon, the president of the DGS. Well, he's of course in Derby now, but you got some proper stalwarts in Nottingham, and you should be very proud that you have been successful in working with some of them at least, if not all. Coming to the changing culture, I don't think we can. Yes, we should try and encourage hospitals and our managers and our execs, etc., to get the right kind of staff, equipment, space, this, that, and the other. But I think as ReconditionTheNation has shown us, we don't always need permission to do small stuff. And sometimes that small stuff is bigger than the bigger stuff. And yes, if the system provided all the equipment, that's great. But as my own patient showed me that, and I'm not suggesting people start using their beds for exercise, but there are ways and means to do that. And you will know your local system better than anybody else. But do what you can.
So I think I put my timer down to 1 minute now. So I think the first thing is, I think walking is also about confidence building, but also since when did it become the physio's job to get patients out of bed? It's just not okay. And as nurses and others, we need to own this. So for patients, have them doing sit down and stand up at their chair rather than just sitting then, marinating in a chair for all day long. Get them doing, and when they're having meals, before they start the meal, do 10 sit-ups, that's 10,000. That stuff is about the strengthening, bringing everyone you can to the party. The most untapped resource in healthcare are patients and their families. So how do we make them get them walking if it's safe to do so? And they need to be able to determine that, not just us. Go down the stairs to the coffee shop, not just keep walking up and down. Knowing that actually there's more demand physiologically going down a stairs than there is going up a stairs. So if they can't go, at least they can walk down the stairs. So all the little things cumulatively adding up. But we send people to rehabilitation to recondition from the deconditioning that occurred in acute hospitals. So something is always better than nothing. And not wait for the whichever clinician, particularly the physios, to have to do this work. This is a responsibility of every one of us.
Thank
you very much, Laura.
Hi everyone, so I work with Beth at NUH. I'm the therapy clinical lead for healthcare of elderly and same day emergency care. So I've worked in geriatrics for a good on a decade now. And one thing that I've really noticed is our junior therapists and our kind of precepty nursing colleagues are becoming more and more risk averse once they hit the clinical workspace. So I guess, has anyone got any tips or tricks in terms of how we as acute trusts and clinicians and experts in our area can influence the HEIs to kind of promote that positive risk taking in our newly qualified staff members and build the kind of culture from there?
Brian, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, so this session now is only at 3 o'clock, not 2. I think we have collective work to do with the HEIs. I'm involved as a prof in a couple of them, and we need to make sure that the people coming out, if you will, are fit for service. I think there's something in it. I think there's a clue in the fact that people need a year of preceptorships, like to actually teach them to become qualified people. There is something not right. So we need to be working with the HEIs and saying, you need to come out to the workplace to see the realities rather than, I mean, I'm a recovering academic, as a number of you know. We need them out there where going to the Gemba in lean things. They need to see where the truth is in order to understand what's going on with the students in the workplace. Well, and I do want to say something very briefly as well about the summit, if I may, but I'll save that till Amit said his thing. But I think it's about that, making a much closer links, but particularly HEIs need to come out of the towers and into the workplace. From the high, hard ground of theory, they need to be in the swampy lowlands of practice.
Amit, can you do 1 minute, and I want to give 1 minute to the end for Brian so we can talk about the global summit?
Absolutely. I think Brian has already said it. Leaders set the tone and managers carry the culture, and we need to influence both of them.
Thanks, Amit. Clearly, we definitely need to do one of these again because this has been really popular. This would be great. So I did promise Brian I'd give him the floor to share everybody about the this year's MBJ Paralysis Global Summit. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. And very briefly, I'm mindful of your time. So we'll have Nick, we will have Amit, we will have Jackie, we will have Josh, and that's just the ones I see at this party. And so really, it's going to be a great, the conference program should be out next week. Really excited that James Y and Isabel Henderson are going to be talking about the Alberta study. So that's going to bear in mind. Oh, and it goes something back for you, Claire, as well. These are all captured, they are recorded. So for candidates to have a look and let them go back into the last 5 years and see what's available to them. But we're really excited about this particular year. It just feels like, and I think it's the maturation of the conversations we're having in the deconditioning space. We're also launching a new video because deconditioning doesn't just happen to older people. So that's a short, snappy about what it feels like as a younger person to get up and start moving in the ward setting. Exactly 2 p.m. Thank you. The 10th and 11th, starting at 8 a.m. on the 10th of July, finishing at 8 a.m., which will be my 5 a.m. in Australia, by the way. Just saying, if you can smell burning, that'll be the martyrdom. I'll be up by 3:30 for the end while I'm over there. But yeah, we're really looking forward and love to have you all. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Brilliant. So pop the link in the chat. Brilliant session, everybody. Thank you very much for your questions. See you all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.